Hello, I am Chantel Neal, and I will be doing the PBIS and popcorn training session online video. So before I get started, I just want to explain that I am having sinus issues, so I may have to blow my nose throughout this training session. And also what I'll do, because I have to use my computer as my camera because my other camera in class is not charged. And I wanted to do this today because I have time. And I'll just show like which one I'm on, and then I'll say what I would say if it was in class. And I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel because I have a YouTube channel just for like tutorials. And I'll put it on there and I'll send you the link because I feel like it's going to be too big to send in an email. And just let me know any kind of comments or anything that I need to work on, just in case I have to present this on the 17th. I wanted to make sure that I got that. Also, culture and structure. I did do a training on my campus during, I believe it was like on the 7th of August. We go back early at the CTC. So I did the culture and structure. I did like a little smash up of that for some of the staff members here. Okay, so I'm going to begin. So hello everyone. Welcome to PBIS and Popcorn Culture and Relationships. Let me say that again, that this is culture and relationships. So if you are in the wrong room, please go out to the flags and find out which class you're supposed to be in. Or I would probably know, but I don't know at this moment where you're supposed to be in. So I can direct you to this class. I want to thank you for coming out this evening to a PBIS and popcorn session, and I will be your instructor for the evening. And I'm so glad to see you all. Okay, so remember that PBIS and classroom, the big six, which is culture, structure, expectations, interaction, reinforcement, and corrections. This right here is really going to be focused on your culture and your interactions, culture in relationships. But remember, we did those modules over all of those. Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to explore the dimensions of the t-test and identify that PBIS connection. So, PBIS is a part of your t-test. They do go hand in hand. It's not just out there on its own. And we're also going to engage in culture and relationship building activities and identify relationship building strategies because it's so important. A lot of times now kids, if they know that you care, then they'll be willing to do more for you in class. And I know some campuses have done the Capturing Kids' Heart. I know I've done that with a different district. So who out here has done Capturing Kids' Heart? Capturing Kids' Heart is not anything separate. It can be a part of PBIS. It's just a way to reinforce that relationship part piece in PBIS. And also, we still want to make sure that we're doing our teaching our expectations as well. And that's also part of the Capturing Kids' Hearts because you also want to involve kids in those expectations in Capturing Kids' Hearts. And when you look at t-tests, the t-test dimensions. The t-test dimensions that are supported by PBIS is 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. And so you can see specifically when you talk about classroom culture and relationships, but it also impacts your environment, the routines and procedures on there, and also managing student behavior. When you have a relationship with your students, then it's easier to manage behavior. Okay, so at this time, we're going to do a think, pair, share. So I want you to read this quote. And take a moment to think about what this quote means to you. And then we're going to share with our elbow partner And if you don't have an elbow partner, just share with who's at your table. And if you're at a table by yourself, just find the nearest table and share with someone. Just share. I guess I would give them like 3 to 5 minutes, but I'm not going to do that here because I have work that I need to get back to and I'm on my conference period. And so then we would share. And I would ask a couple of them to share out with the class, and then we would go into the self-assessment. I didn't show you. There we go. So we would do the self-assessment, and I would say, on your table, you will find a self-assessing your motivational practice. So if you would take a moment to complete that and just share your findings with your group. We want to find out who is super hot. We might need to get a fire extinguisher and let them put them out, and who maybe needs a little help. So I'm going to give you 5 to 7 minutes to discuss. So we would do that activity. So then we would go to this next one. Okay, so let's start talking about classroom communities. On this slide, you see many different pictures. And what type of communities do you see in the slide? Make some responses. Okay, so we're talking about communities out in society. So how does your classroom community differ from communities in the society? Or does it? Make some answers. And who are the stakeholders that comprise your classroom community? Take some answers from that. Okay, we're going to go to this slide. All right, so this graphic shows the 4 types of relationships in a school setting to build a classroom community. So you have teacher to student, student to teacher, student to student, and teacher to teacher. And we're going to look and talk about each one of those tonight. First, we're going to look at teacher to student. So, all right, so it's important when we're talking about teacher to student that you show that you have a care and a genuine interest in your students. I know that one of the things that I do for my students is that I make sure I try to be at the door greeting them, and I speak to every student that I see. And I make them speak back to me because also that's, I think of as a career skill as well. So I make them speak back. I'm like, good morning or good afternoon or how are you? And I don't take a grunt. I'm like, oh, excuse me, I'm speaking. But I have coworkers that shake their students' hands. So just showing somehow that you care, whatever you do, and it's unique to yourself. What I do to show that I care in my classroom may not work for someone else because it's tailored to my personality. And I just always try to say, make sure that it's genuine. Because I think that students know when something's fake. So just try to be genuine. And hopefully if you're in this position and you're in this training, that you've taken time to come outside of your scheduled work hours, that you genuinely care. So you'll be able to find some way to express that you genuinely care. When you do that, it just makes them feel like they're part of a community and that they matter. So that's really important. So when you're thinking about trying to build these relationships, intentionally plan to seek out student information. So however you do that, one of the things that I do is I take a student information. Of course, I'm at the Career and Technical Center, so I do it online. I make a Google form, but I take that information and then I look over it, and I always ask them what are their strengths. Tell me what is your greatest strength, 3 strengths. And when I have students that tell me, and I have this so many times, I don't know. So they think that I don't read that. So later on, during the first 6 weeks, I go to them and I'm like, so, this is one of your strengths. You said you didn't know, but look at this. This is something you do really well. And so they're looking like, what do you mean? I said, on your student information, you said you didn't know what your strengths are. And so I'm going to help you throughout this year by pointing out things that you're strong in. So that way, when you're asked that question again, you'll know the answer. So just make sure you do some sort of way to contact and get that information with them. There's lots of different things. I also do student teacher conferences, but it's not about anything. I just schedule them throughout the semester, and I just talk with the student like, how are you doing? How are you doing in life? How are you doing in this class? How do you think things are going for you? What do you need from me? Um, and so that's just a way to build those relationships. Also try to have, it says learning styles and intelligence, that multiple intelligence, that is really big now in education. But just keep that in mind. Try to um, help to keep that in mind and find out what students are in those oh, excuse me. I was trying to hold it in. Where students are when it comes to multiple intelligence. And then, I have found sometimes I do it like every other year. I don't do it every year because my students say they're tired of seeing it because I guess so many teachers are doing it. So if I don't do it that year, I just try to make sure that I give a lot of leeway, and so that way that I can try to capture all of those multiple intelligence and how kids learn in the classroom. So we do things hands-on, we do audio, we do visual, we try to do all of the different things, and you should be doing that anyway. So, okay, so strategies to consider. So will someone share with the group why it is important for the teacher to build a relationship with students? So take some answers. And of course, there's lots of different ways to build relationships with students, and we talked about the different ways that you can build relationships with the students. Some things that resources that we're going to give you in this particular session is life mapping or culture mapping, student surveys and interviews, and the 2x10 method. So when you look at life mapping, there's a handout that I have given you. So in your handout, you will find a building a culture map. It's recommended that you complete a culture map about you with your students. Please keep in mind that to keep it professional. So you don't maybe need to put that weekend in Cancun on your culture map, okay? If it was not professional. They don't need to know all of your personal business. But anyway, this just gives your students an opportunity to get to know you because they do. They want to know you. They have so many questions and they want to know you. And so I always take that as a sign because a lot of times, students they may not ask you any questions. They don't care. And so when they're asking me questions at first, I'm like, oh, you're a little nosy. But but then I remind myself, oh, okay, they're showing that you care. So you want to know things about me when you care. So you can use it. You can use it for writing topics or anything like that. It can be used at the primary level a lot. But just look at the life mapping and culture map that you have to. Okay, so another way to gain knowledge of your students, of course, is the student surveys or interviews. And that's something that I told you that I do. I do the information sheet, and I also do it's kind of like an interview, but it's really quick. It's just 5 minutes, and I call them like a conference, and I put it on the board, and I ask them, and you'd be surprised when I just ask them, so what do you need from me for you to be successful? What do you need? If then they're, someone's like, oh, well, and some of them are really honest. I'm not putting my best foot forward. So you can do any of those things. But on this handout that you have the personal view of you questions, excuse me. And you don't necessarily need to ask all of those questions, but it's just a good tool to have if you don't already have a template if you're wanting to do a student survey or interview. So they have personality, interest, school, learning, study habits. I like to ask if I'm doing what they do, like if they have extracurriculars, if they play a sport, if they work. You want to know because if a student is falling asleep in class and then you find out that they didn't get off of work until 1 o'clock, and that job is very important for them and their family. And then you can work with that student to make some strategies to kind of help them be successful. So it's nice to have that bit of information as well about your students. You can also do things like personality questions, what makes you tick. And I do this throughout, I kind of spread it out throughout the year. I don't do it all together, but you can. And so we'll do that because we do a lot of cooperative learning groups. And so we talk about that. We do, what makes you happy? What makes you smile? How do you like to be supported, or how do you like to be recognized? So we do things like that. And that's on here. What makes you happy? What's important to you? Who do you respect? And if you could change one thing, what would it be and why? And there's some more questions here. And of course, there are always additional resources and handouts and all of that you can find about this if you just go to the PBIS intranet website. So, all right, so the last one we're going to look at is the 2x10 method. And this basically is when a teacher spends 2 uninterrupted minutes giving your undivided attention to a student for 10 consecutive days. For us, because in high school level, we're on a block schedule, so that's 10 class periods. Or I kind of just play it by ear whenever I've done this, because sometimes I found that, a couple, you don't need the full 10 because it makes it so much longer when you're doing it on block schedule that's like the whole semester just about. But just kind of, it's basically 10, 2 for 10. And this is something really good to use when you have a student that maybe is acting up or they have behavioral issues. Then you can kind of build that relationship with that student. It helps, especially if you're having to get onto that student a lot, because then what ends up happening is that most of your interaction with that student is negative. And these 2 minutes is not negative. It's you just talking with that student, finding out about them, getting to know, building that relationship. And so that helps. So that for that particular kid that maybe has a little behavioral issue, that everything that you say to that kid is not negative. So that's one of the reasons when I use it, the 2x10 is whenever I have a kid and I find myself this like the no, stop, don't, kid. And I was like, that's mostly what I'm saying to this kid. So let me spend some time with him and say something positive to him and just ask him some things that, that really kind of does make a difference on behavior, because even at the high school level, sometimes acting out is attention seeking behavior. They take the negative attention if they can't get the positive. So when they're getting the positive attention, now they're like, well, I don't need to act out negatively because I'm getting attention. So it may help have that effect. Okay, so we're going to watch a video about teachers who use morning meetings to build a positive classroom community. So we're not going to watch the whole entire video because it's for time's sake, but we are going to watch the morning meeting part. So we watch the video. What was one of the most important things you noticed from the video? Get the questions. Did you notice what the teacher shared about her classroom? She shared, in order to get any kid to learn, they must feel safe and respected, because without that, you will not accomplish much academically. Who in here is already conducting morning meetings or any other kind of community building activities in your classroom? Could you please share what you're doing in your classroom? And so if you are not using morning meetings, but you plan on it, it's really strongly recommended that you inform your campus administration that you're going to do this. This way they are aware of the activity, the purpose of the activity, and what it looks like and sounds like. Okay? So now let's look at student to teacher. So before we do that, is there any questions or any comments about teacher to student? Okay, so let's go ahead. So we have to intentionally also plan for the student to teacher relationship the same way as we do for the teacher to student relationship. Okay, so we have to make sure that we do that. This is some things that we can do. We have the learning activities and inventories, which allows the teachers to challenge student learning and make the meaning of the content of the class. And also just knowing your students' preferences on things. And sometimes, especially at the secondary level where you have multiple classes, you have classes that have different personalities. And so, I had one class last year that absolutely loved to discuss. They wanted to discuss. They want, that was just their thing to do. And then I had another class, and if you put them in a group to discuss, they just look at each other. So they did better discussing online, but as far as getting out there and talking face to face, it was like pulling teeth. I mean, you could get them to do it, but it was quite a bit of work on my part to get that facilitated. So it's just classroom personalities, and so sometimes you'll see that. So strategies to consider for student to teacher, you have rating learning activity, learning styles, inventory, and classroom mailbox. So we're going to look at those three things to build that student to teacher relationship. So in your handouts, you will see the rating how you learn. You can give this self-assessment at the beginning of the year and consider checking in with students throughout the year about any possible learning style changes. So one of the things, if you're thinking that idea that I said about the student teacher conferences or little meetings, interviews, whatever you want to call them, this could be a good tool that you could do at the very beginning, and then halfway through the semester or year, whenever you decide, you can take this and then sit down with the student about that. And so you're having that showing that growth and using that growth mindset, because you're like, okay, well, this is what you said at the beginning of the year. Do you still feel this way? And so you're showing them growth mindset. Another strategy you can use is the learning style inventory. In your package, you also have that. It's called Exploring Your Smarts, and this is a learning inventory. It's divided into 8 sections, so that way you can help determine your students' learning style. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the classroom mailbox for student to teacher feedback. Okay, so I want to proceed with caution using this strategy, because with the classroom mailbox, teach the expectations along with the examples of how and when students should provide feedback. The classroom mailbox is a great strategy when the teacher makes adjustments, acknowledgments, or allows for students to incorporate their suggestions and feedbacks into the classroom. But it can also be, if you don't have those expectations, it can be a problem for the classroom if you don't set your expectations beforehand. But the classroom mailbox does allow and give students a voice, and it also makes them seem like their opinions and thoughts matter. So the key thing to remember is, if you're going to use the classroom mailbox, you have to be prepared to respond in a productive manner for students' voice to be heard and safe. So you have to respond, and it has to be productive. And you also have to have that fidelity with that. So, and the classroom mailbox is just kind of like having a comment or a suggestion box. I did something several years ago. I'm always trying to do things different. And it wasn't a suggestion box. I was really big on trying to do compliments and teach students to speak positively of others. So we did what we call applegrams. And so we would do those like once a week, and they would get the applegram and they would give it to a student. And so at first, I assigned them a student, like, this is your student you're going to watch for this week. At the end of the week, you're going to give them a compliment about something that you observed this week. So that way I made sure that every kid got one. But as time went on and we got used to it, I didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't have to assign kids to give the applegram. I didn't have to do that, because if they notice as they were giving their applegrams, if they notice a kid didn't get one, then they go get another piece of paper and have like a little apple on it, and they write something and they give it to that kid. So they were making sure that everyone got one, because they knew that was the expectation, is that we want to make sure that everyone got at least one Applegram every single week of a compliment, because everyone deserves to be complimented. It's only once a week. Everyone deserves a compliment at least once a week. So just make sure that you set those expectations if you're going to use the classroom mailbox, and to give just real feedback to those students. Don't just have it out there and then don't ever look at it, and don't ever address what the students have to say in there. Okay, so why is it important to understand how our students communicate? Okay, the way we communicate with each other, teacher to student, student to teacher, student to student, and teacher to teacher, can determine how we react to each other and the positive or negative impact school and our classroom community. So it's all about building that community. So let's look at this matrix. At the top, you will see emotion words such as happy, angry, and sad. And on the left-hand side, there are questions for different settings. This is a tool you can use to honor how students communicate in certain settings under certain conditions. Okay. As we have gone through today's session, we have talked about culture and building relationships without discussing race or ethnicity. Key 3 elements about culture. You may want to write this down. Our culture comes from how, where, when, by whom we were raised. Culture affects how individuals view the world and how they live. Our students' culture impacts their experience with school. And culture is both formed and transmitted through communication, verbal and nonverbal. Okay, so in order to help us understand how to honor our students' culture, we're going to walk through this one example. How do you respond at home when you are angry? Okay, we'll take some answers. Well, how do you respond at school when you're angry? When asking these questions, the student gives you insight about their culture at home and their culture at school. Okay? If the student anger response is not favorable for school, this will let the teacher know the following: what to expect when the student is angry, what behavior instruction needs to be taught before the behavior occurs, and how to reinforce the student when meeting the expectation. Okay? So let's look at student to student. Are there any questions about student to teacher before we move to student to student? Okay, well, let's do so. Student to student. As educators, we may think that this process of student building relationships with their peers should be a natural process. It's not. However, in this technology age, we know that they face some challenges that we don't. They don't know how to interact with each other face to face because they're so used to interacting looking down at a device. So, but that's an important that's skill. That's a soft skill, being able to work with others. So they need to learn this skill. When students work with peers, they are better able to solve problems and learn deeply. And there's a lot of learning that can be gained with interaction with peers. A lot of learning. So a safe classroom community creates conditions for students to take risks, to make mistakes and feel comfortable making mistakes, to raise that hand and have that wrong answer. That takes a lot of courage for some students. Increase the opportunity to complete assigned tasks and join in discussion when there is no feeling of threat. So that's really big for me. I want my students to discuss. And so we do a lot of classroom building, team building activities so that they can build that sense of it's okay. This is a safe space where I can share and I can speak up. Okay. So some strategies to consider: group sharing, morning meetings, and conversation cubes. That's what we're going to look at. These are some strategies for you to take back with you. When talking about group sharing or working in groups in our classroom, it is inferred that the work is all academic. Okay? We want to make sure each student has an opportunity to participate in classroom discussion. You may have students that are not academically motivated but have ideas and willing to share them about non-academic topics. And the thing of it is that you just have to expand what your idea is of academic topics. You know, if you're teaching a math class, that doesn't mean that you can't talk about something or have a topic other than math. You can maybe find something out there in the real world that's happening that math can be applied to. You can find, riddles or whatever else. I know I teach court systems, so it's, a little bit easier for me because we can talk about a lot of different things that are happening out in the world right now that we can tie back to courts and the law and the legal system. But they really enjoy that. Whenever I take something when we're learning just about the structures of court, and then I take a case that's happening and they discuss it and they discuss it, and then I tie it all in. Oh, well, this, now you know about how a case goes from a district court all the way to an appeals court because you were talking about it. So there's a lot of learning that goes on there. Um, so intentional group sharing, time for unmotivated students to express ideas and examples, sharing ideas, hobbies, goals, hopes, experiences. You can even do that just for like 5 minutes. Just have them just share. And I do that. Just, what is your biggest hope? What is your biggest fear? What's your favorite food? And you start that off at the beginning of the year with something that's safe. What's your favorite food? Then as you get deeper into the year, they'll know each other a little bit better. What's your biggest fear? Okay. Morning meetings. Teachers use the first few minutes of class time to check in with their students, develop their social emotional skills, and prepare them for the learning ahead. And we've already talked about morning meetings before, and they can be utilized for a lot of different things. I use Poll Everywhere as my morning meeting. I just have emojis and just, how are you feeling today? And we just take our class temperature. And then we look and see how we're feeling today. Conversation cubes. These are used to spark conversation among students. They can be icebreakers. They can be getting to know you class. They can be discussion starters, any kind of thing like that. And you can get those. They're everywhere. Everywhere. You can buy them already. You can find them online and just make your own conversation cubes. It's up to you. All right, so before we move on to teacher, does anyone have any questions about student to student? I just want to reiterate how important it is to teach our students how to interact with their peers, okay? Because that's going to be important because we have to interact with our peers. And so that's a work skill. So they learn that at this point, how to interact with peers. Okay, so let's go to teacher. Okay, we cannot forget the teacher-to-teacher relationship. It is important. It is part of our culture. It is part of building relationships as well. Okay, so why is it important to build a positive relationship amongst colleagues? Take some answers. Please keep in mind, as adults in our school communities, we contribute to the school's climate and culture as well. And so we all have a collective responsibility to practice what we preach, basically. So we can't talk to the students about getting along with others. Meanwhile, we're gossiping about each other in the faculty lounge. I mean, we have to be able to get along as well. Okay. Strategies to consider: purposely honor the strengths of others, willingly assist colleagues when able, and openly share professional successes and challenges. All right, so we're going to review what we learned today. So we talked about the teacher to student relationship, student to teacher, student to student, and teacher to teacher. Okay. This is not a one and done checklist to complete to move on to the next step. This should be an ongoing. Relationships are ongoing. So you can't just, oh, well, I've done it. You have to keep building it up. It's kind of like a plant, the relationship plant. And if you don't water it, then it dies. So you have to keep this up. You may build a relationship with a student, but then if you never come back and talk to that student, you do the 2 by 10 method, and after those 10 days, you never speak to that student again, You built a relationship, but then you let it die. So, and the same thing with other teachers. You just have to, all of these relationships, these are things that you really have to be intentional about. Building those relationships with your students, teaching your students how to build relationships with each other, and just requiring it. Um, I know a strategy that I didn't share earlier was good things we do every Friday, and we put our phones away. No one is not allowed to have their phones out, and then we share something positive that happened throughout the week to us. And it can be as simple as, oh, I got to spend the evening with my mother who works two jobs. And that's something the student actually shared, and we applaud. Now, I didn't come up with the applause. I came up with the good things. It was a student who just started applauding. And I asked me, said, well, because people deserve to be applauded sometimes, Miss Neal. So now we applaud each other. And you should just see their faces whenever they get the little smile if they're getting that applause. And so teenagers, they think they're too cool for school. So they always act like, oh, I'm too cool for good things. But if I forget, if I'm late doing the good things on Friday and they think I'm not going to do it, I'm forgetting, they say something. Are we going to do good things? So this slide has multiple layers. Oh, I wasn't supposed to read that. I want to introduce you to one more strategy called the respect agreement. Some of you may know and or use a respect agreement or a variation of a respect agreement, a social contract. Especially if you're in one of those campuses that went to capturing kids' hearts, you probably do have a social contract. Okay? A respect agreement is not used to replace your classroom behavior expectations matrix. It's not. Your matrix outlines what we do in our classroom community and when it takes place. This addresses the classroom culture. The respect agreement is the how we honor each other as we govern ourselves throughout the day. So this focuses on the classroom climate. Together, culture, what we do, and climate, how it feels, builds a classroom community. So sometimes people have been wondering, how does the social contract and PBIS go together? Well, now you have your answer. It's not to replace your expectations, it's to work with your expectations. Because your expectations is about the behavior, and your social contract is about how we make each other feel. Okay. So you have an example of a blank respect agreement, and I'm going to read all four sections. I don't actually have this pulled up, but I have seen it, and I will read all four sections. And so it's the district's expectation that each classroom has a behavior expectation matrix posted and taught to students. So it's not enough just to have it posted, you have to actually teach it to your students. Otherwise, it's just another piece of decoration. Okay. So if you want more information on how to create a classroom behavior expectations matrix, please sign up for the structure and expectation session. I will tell you I have this and I teach mine, and it does make a difference. So please do so. So let's take a look at the completed respect agreement. The teacher completes the respect agreement with the class by asking the students what it looks and sounds like for each of the four sections. Also, a student or teacher, what do you need to feel respected? And that's really important, especially if you're talking about respect, to ask them what it is. What is it to them? Because sometimes they felt disrespected and you don't even know because of so many different things. So that's good to kind of find out what they think. They think differently than we do. Once it's completed, everyone signs the agreement as a symbol of commitment to honor what is agreed upon. Then you post it in the classroom. Okay. So it's a great strategy for redirecting students and our teachers when the respect agreement is not being honored. So you can do that. Are you honoring? This is our agreement. It's a contract. Are you honoring that? Are you meeting your end of the obligation? So as the credits roll, please take 2 to 3 minutes to identify the strategies learned today and which ones can students look for you to implement this school year. So what are you going to do? What are you going to take away from this training? And then we'll share what some people have written down. Okay, so if you need to contact someone for more information, you can refer to the Office of or the PBIS. It's PBIS now. Internet website to get more information. I want to also thank you again for attending this session. I know that there was many other things that you could be doing at this time, but I and your students also thank you for taking your personal time and investing it in learning more about PBIS so that you can bring what you learned to your students. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.